this as informative and also as concise as possible in case you want to attend some of the other programs that are happening. But we have a lot of information to get through, so we'll do our best to get through it in an efficient manner. So today is about researching employers, and I have with me two very important and special guests. We have Carolyn Kim, who is a recent grad, a 2012 grad, and she is also an LCS Graduate Fellow and has been working very diligently on putting together our Diversity Gala, which is our biggest event of the year. And so, in addition to many other things that she has done, formerly she was our Senior Public Interest Law Career Services Coordinator, and she held that role for over 2 years and is also working in the Public Interest Law Career Services Office now as a consultant, if you will. And then we also have Amy Kwan, who is a third year. Many of you may know Amy. Amy has been working in our office for 2 years now, and is our senior researcher. She is an invaluable resource and a pleasure to have in our office. So the reason why I asked both Carolyn and Amy to speak today is because they are both excellent researchers. They are professional researchers, if you will, and they have researched in just about every area that you could possibly think of in the legal community and beyond. So they have a lot of great and, more importantly, useful and on-point information to share with you today. So thank you for joining us. Okay, so researching is a pretty broad topic. You know, how do you research? What do you research? When do you research? So we're trying to basically narrow it down for you and make it as specific as possible so that it will be in turn easier for you to get started in this process. If you haven't begun your legal job search, if you haven't begun to research employers, practice areas, things of that nature, hopefully this program will help you form a strategy or a set of goals that will get you to that point where you can begin this process. If you are more seasoned, then hopefully this program will allow you to get a little bit more focused in your strategy and also make you aware of some research tools out there that you might not otherwise have known. So focal points are key points to remember when researching. Just that. Why are you researching? What's the point? What's the end game? What is your strategy? Where are you going to start? Having an organized plan will help you with this. And then just that, organizing your results. So whatever data you collect, whoever you speak to, whatever research tools you use, make sure you're keeping some sort of chart, whether that's physically written or in your head or a combination of both, which is what I would recommend, that you're being organized about it so that you can quickly pull up those results, where you can go to that spreadsheet and very quickly assess who you spoke with about what practice area, and when you're doing that follow-up or you're having that informational interview or you're connecting with that relationship again, you have a clear understanding of your background with that person. So these are just some key points to remember. Now I'm going to turn it over to Amy and Carolyn to get a little bit more specific in the actual organization and thought process behind researching. So let's start with you, Amy. These questions are up there sort of as a guide, but who and what do you research and why? When you begin your research, what initial steps do you take? And how do you organize your results and your strategies, if any? So, you can break them down. Let's hear your thoughts on that. And then Carolyn, will go to you.
Okay, well, my job at LCS is primarily playing the role as being manager of the employer outreach team. So a lot of what we do is we look up employers online and we talk to the permanent staff members up at LCS to figure out what kind of people they want to meet with when we do we set up employer visits, or what kind of panelists they want to have for these lunchtime panels that we have. So our job is to secure these people and to set up those kinds of visits. So usually we'll have some sort of idea of maybe what kind of graduates we want, let's say, for example, between a certain year to another year or within certain practice areas. So once we can narrow down to what kind of group we're trying to target, it'll help us determine where to begin the search. So I guess that kind of answers the first couple of questions, talking to Vicki or Morgan in my case, but in your case, figuring out who you want to look for on the internet. And usually when I find what I'm looking for, let's say practitioners in the criminal law field, I'll usually organize everything in an Excel sheet, and if I want to contact them, I will, label dates where I initially contacted them, dates where I follow up, and make note of whatever response I get from them.
And we're going to get more into the specifics of what research tools are utilized and the methods, so we're going to get back to Amy on some of those specifics. So Carolyn, can you give us a general description based upon those questions?
Sure. So a lot of what Amy does is what I do, except it's probably tailored to public interest field, or especially now working with the Diversity Gala, it's specifically attorneys that are related to the award recipients that we have. So I do a lot of the similar types of researching for employers as like my job in LCS, but I also do researching for employers for my personal student/graduate who's looking for a job self. And so a couple of reasons why I would start researching people is a couple of things. First, I see a job posting that I'm interested in, and I see a contact person. I first go and see if they're an attorney and find out if I can find more information about them. Writing cover letters, I like to tailor my cover letters specifically to a specific individual in the, I do a lot of public interest stuff, so it would be a public interest field, so government agency or a nonprofit group. So I'd like to tailor it and have my cover letter addressed to a specific person, and I'd like to do research about the actual organization that I'm applying to include that in the cover letter. So that's one aspect of researching and why I do it. Another reason that I've done it in the past is if I want to get more familiar, if I know ahead of time who the attorneys are who are going to be interviewing me, I like to go in knowing a little bit about them before I go into the interview, or even after the interview, doing follow-up thank you letters. I'd like to include things about them as well. So those are a couple of reasons why, why I start researching people. In terms of strategy, do you want me to hold off on strategy?
Let's hold up a little bit.
Okay.
We'll get more into specifics. So as you can already hear from both Amy and Carolyn, there are different levels and types of research. Each of them can be multi-layered and complex. So whether it's researching a practice area, whether it's researching a job, or it's researching a person behind those roles, you may have to do several layers of research, whether it's a broader perspective, maybe stalking a LinkedIn profile to get some more in-depth information and a better understanding of who you're going to be speaking to or the job that you're applying to, or just getting general information to make sure this is what you really want to do. There are several steps that you can and should be taking in order to get the information necessary. So we're going to talk about the specifics. We've heard some general reasons as to the why and what you should be doing when you're thinking about preparing to do any type of research. Now we're going to actually get into some resources, and this is very helpful, and I think Amy and Carolyn can speak to this, depending on what you're looking for. So in Amy's case, if she comes to me and she says, okay, Morgan, you're going to be doing employer outreach in November, what practice areas are you interested in targeting? And I throw back to her, well, I'm interested in venture capital and finance or wealth portfolio management and speaking to someone in those areas. And I'd also like to do some public interest. Go out and find me some people. Well, that's pretty general. So that's a pretty general answer for her to get. So then she has to go and she has to do that research to first get a better understanding of those practice areas, find the people or the firms or agencies that support those practice areas, and then get a better understanding of the people behind those areas and behind those roles in order to make a connection for me. So there's a lot of back work that's done. In Carolyn's case, and we'll use the example of both the Public Interest Career Fair and Diversity Gala, she has to figure out what's fresh and innovative right now as opposed to last year or the year before. She has to figure out what other practice areas that are incorporated in that public interest, public sector community may have not been represented in the past that we want now. She then has to go and find those people behind those roles and those firms and agencies and then make that connection. So it's multi-layered, it's complex. So we're going to talk more about how you start that process and what resources you utilize. And the best way to get started is to go right to our homepage. This is sort of the mothership, if you will, of beginning your research. And I say that for a variety of reasons. One, because it's sort of one-stop shopping, if you will. You have all of our social media sites represented, our blog represented, all of our YouTube videos represented, all at a click and a glance at our homepage. You then have some areas where it says links to resources, where you can go in and get multi-layered research. So for example, if you click on our current students tab, that will connect you to our career pathway wikis that we're going to talk about in a moment. It will connect you to some job search resources. It will connect you to some data. It will even connect you to some legal temp agencies and a lot more. Our daily feeds are a great way to do initial research. Why? Because we have employer information represented. We have networking information represented. We have fundamental programs represented. So it's a great way to get a snapshot of what you think you might want to start exploring. And then we also have, of course, the SCU Law Jobs link, which in and of itself incorporates over 5,000 employers in our database. It incorporates a professional network where you can reach out to people within the legal community. It has jobs. It's a house for your documents. So that in and of itself is a nice research house, if you will. So Carolyn and Amy, can you speak to the resources that are available through our website and what you do to start your search and utilizing these areas? So Carolyn, let's start with you.
Yay. So a couple of things. I guess it just depends on where I'm beginning. If it really is talking about researching a new field of law that I don't really have familiarity with, I would start, like Morgan said, figuring out what that specific legal profession field is. Like if it's family law, there's a whole bunch of different types of family law, right? Adoption, domestic violence, whatever it is. So I would start with the general, like Google, Wikipedia type of really primary search to figure out exactly what the field is that I'm researching in. And then after I get a stronger grasp of who I want to target, then I come back to utilizing these resources.
I put career pathways up.
Oh, actually, we can talk about the career pathways. Amy, do you want to talk about career pathways? This is a really good source in terms of doing first general research into specific fields.
Sure, so we're currently in the process of building and updating our career pathway wiki on the Law Career Services website, and this is mostly intended to be a tool for 1Ls, though even 2Ls and 3Ls will make really good use out of them. And what they are they essentially break down components of all the different practice areas. So if you go to these pages, they'll tell you what kind of coursework is recommended depending on what kind of area of law you're interested in, and it kind of gives you an overview of what kind of things these particular practice areas entail, what kind of work, and things of that nature. So if you're not really sure what kind of law you want to go into, it might be worth it to go and look through all of the practice areas that are represented right now, and we'll be updating them later to give you a better sense.
And then just building off of the career pathway wikis, we also have specific, like if you're interested in public interest law and you know that that's what you want to do, but you want to see what's out there because it's really a diverse field. You can have someone say that they're, a public interest lawyer and have someone be a government official all the way down to a domestic violence counselor at a nonprofit, and they would still be categorized as a public interest attorney. So if you look at our public interest law career services page, we also go through and similar to the career path wikis, just summarize the different areas of law that there are in the public interest realm and give you a brief description about what this area is, as well as ideas about organizations that are connected to each practice.
Yeah, and I actually want to talk about the career pathway wikis for a moment because I think they are an amazing resource that tend to be underutilized by law students. As both Amy and Carolyn mentioned, we are in the process of updating them, and in fact, they actually are, for the most part, relatively fluid areas because we are always getting more input and updating as we get more information about practice area changes, current trends, new coursework, things of that nature. But what's great about the career pathway wikis is that if you are here as a first year and you know you want to go to law school, you want to be a lawyer, or at least you think you do at this moment, but you really don't know what practice areas you're interested in, or if your background or academics align with it, this is a great way to find that out. So for example, if you're interested in employment law, but you don't know what that means, you can go to the link that says Employment Law in our Career Pathway Wikis, and we'll give you a general overview, we'll give you some specific information, we'll give you some areas in which labor and employment is represented within the legal communities, both in the private and the public sector. And we'll also give you information in courses that will support and complement that exposure, along with some general links. So in researching, if we're taking the research model here, what I would do as a first year is I would say, okay, what am I interested in? What practice areas interest me? I would then go into these particular career pathway wikis. I would research where and in what areas these practice areas are represented. I would then look down to see what professors are listed, to maybe reach out to those professors and find out a little bit more about the classes they teach, and will that support my interests, and when are they available? And then I would maybe go to some of the links and other information that is represented to get some more in-depth information to see if this is worth exploring to me. So, you know, at first glance, this is, oh, some general information about employment law, but it's actually much more than that. This is your foundation, if you will, to build information, resources, and some other areas that will allow you to make an informed decision about how you're going to create that pattern of interest that we keep talking about over the next couple of years. And I mention this because it's important for your overall marketability, which we're constantly stressing. So whether that's practice area pattern of interest, whether that's a foundation pattern of interest, or a particular area such as litigation or transactional that we talk about, you want to start developing these interests and developing these patterns and have a better understanding of what practice areas support this, so that when you go to talk to people in the legal community, you have an understanding of what you're saying, why you're saying it, and you can connect better to your audience. So these are all interrelated. Okay, now I want to go back actually and talk a little bit more about the social media sites and the blog. So we use LinkedIn quite heavily in our office, and I'm sure that US students utilize it as well. But there are many ways that you can use LinkedIn as research tools. So Amy and Carolyn, can you talk about the way you use LinkedIn to network with employers, get more information about practice areas, and also how you organize that in your assignments, your projects that you have? And can you also talk about the LinkedIn groups that are available through LCS, like the Mentor Directory, our group, and there are also some other subgroups like the Recruiter group, and then the Law Union LinkedIn group. So Amy, let's start with you.
So in terms of my position, I find that LinkedIn is really excellent mostly because we have a ton of backdoor databases that we use in LCS to help us set up these kinds of events and to set up the employer visits. But sometimes those databases are out of date. So at least in my case, I think LinkedIn is really useful to stay in tune with whoever you're trying to reach out to. That's usually the first thing they will update if they have any sort of career change or anything of that nature. So if you want to contact them through there, you can directly send them a message, and you'll know if they've moved or switched firms.
Yeah, so like Amy was saying, LinkedIn is more useful in terms of looking for individual attorneys, employers, individual people. And then there's also the groups, but I'm going to talk about looking up individual employers right now first, and then we'll talk about the different LinkedIn groups that there are that are available that you should be a part of if you're not already. But in terms of looking up employers and looking up anyone on LinkedIn, you just gotta keep in mind that LinkedIn tracks who looks up who, so if you go to your LinkedIn page, I think there's an option where you can see who's viewed your page. So if you want to do some, like under the radar type of research, we highly recommend that you use Google Chrome and use their...
Let's just talk about some of the resources that are actually available through Clarinet. So Government Honors and Internship Handbook is something that I just mentioned. This is basically the mothership, if you will, of federal programs. There's also some state and local, but it's, I would say, 98% federal programs. And not only do they have internships or externships at the first, second, and third year level, but they also list some post-grad or honors programs that are really incredible and very competitive and high profile. So if you're interested in anything from, the Environmental Protection Agency, to the CIA, to the FBI, to the Federal Trade Commission, all of these programs and the information that supports that, including application information, deadlines, criteria, satellite offices, are all captured in this handbook. It's actually quite phenomenal. We do tend to post deadline updates from time to time, although they happen several times a day sometimes, so we're not able to throw out to you as many deadlines as we would like. But if you make a habit of going into the Government Honors and Internship Handbook at least once or twice a week, if you're really interested in this particular area, all those deadlines will be updated real time. So when you actually go into our main index in Clarinet, and for those of you who may not be familiar with how to do that, you could easily access it from our homepage, or really any page from the law school website. And you would want to go down to the link that says Clarinet, and in there you would type in Law Career Services or Law Career as the main index, and then you would need to type in the current password Miller. On our website, on our webpage, if you go to current students and then job search research or job search tools, we actually have a link for Government Honors, which will bypass about 3 of those steps and take you right to the current Clarinet password, and then that will bring you to our main index. For those of you who are familiar with Clarinet, you will know that it's not alphabetized, so we apologize in advance for that. So what you will need to do is scroll down and look for the Government Honors and Internship Handbook folder. And the username and the password to access the handbook is right in the link. So when you click on the link that's connected to the folder, it will bring up the handbook, and then you can type in the username and password, and you can search away. And what I like about it is that there's a quick glance table that's at the top of the handbook, and it's broken up by class year and then grad programs. And then beneath that table, there are links that have more expansive information. So whichever research tool you work best with, there's a couple different ways you can navigate that handbook. If you make an appointment with any of the advisors at LCS, we can certainly show you that. We can help you navigate it, and we can bring up some positions to get you started in that process. Then we also have what's called the Intercollegiate Job Bank, another completely and totally underutilized resource. So basically there are about, I think about 8 to 10 universities within California, and it's broken up by state. So if you're planning to do research in, say, New York or Illinois or Oregon, you can also use the Intercollegiate Job Bank to find resources in those states. But let's take California for the purposes of this program. So again, you go to Clarinet following the method that we just talked about. You go to our main index page. You then find the Intercollegiate Job Bank folder. The username and password is right in the link. You type that in, you select your state, and you'll find, in the case of California, about 8 to 10 universities that will appear. You then click on the link of those universities, and they will have internships and externships and jobs, also fellowship programs and things of that nature that they have put on or into this Intercollegiate Job Bank. It's not all inclusive, but I can tell you, I just did a search yesterday, and I think there were 111 jobs that Hastings had. Davis, I think, had 136. So, a great way to find out information about jobs and externships, especially if you're targeting different areas within the state or different areas nationally. And again, when we have an advising appointment, we can go through that with you and get you more familiar with it. We also have other things in there. I'm not going to go through every single folder, but we have judicial externship and clerkship information, and also some DAPE information, along with some other fundamentals. So Clarinet is a great resource. I highly encourage you to utilize it as a part of your initial researching. Do you guys want to make a comment about that at all?
One thing for Clarinet, like if you go at the very bottom, there's a folder called the Pro Bono Guide. If you're interested in public interest, that guide breaks down practice areas and also gives you examples of organizations that practice in that specific practice area that you're looking for. And so normally when I do research into who to invite for the public interest career fair, for example, I go into the Pro Bono research guide, and then I find the practice area like immigration, and then it'll pop up like the guide will actually break down which organizations practice immigration, and then I look up the organization, and then I look through the organization's website, see if there's an alumni, and contact that alumni first. So that kind of gives you kind of like a tree of how to do one type of research. Yeah. So yeah, I promote the Pro Bono Guide. Look at it.
It's fantastic. And when you're talking about an area that is really saturated and has several tentacles, if you will, in different areas and aspects incorporated under this huge umbrella of public interest, public sector, social justice, it's really helpful to have these guides and navigate. Amy?
I was just gonna say that I guess that these are really underused, because I don't think I've ever really used any of these, but I understand from working with you guys and hearing you talk about it before, that these are really great starting points if you're not really sure what kind of job you're looking for, and it'll teach you, especially the judicial externship and clerkship information guide, how to begin your search for those and how to apply for those.
Absolutely. And so what we're trying to present here is sort of a path. So we talked about general information on our homepage. We talked about how to get more specific information utilizing the career pathways. In the case of government or public interest, public sector, you look at the career pathway wiki that represents that. You then get some general information and some specific information. You then go to Clarinet and you go to the Government Honors and Internship Handbook or the pro bono information, and you get more detailed and specific information regarding corporations, agencies, firms that support this, and jobs that are represented within those communities. So what we're trying to show you is how you build upon that research and what steps you use in order to stay organized and focused in this process. Okay, so now we just have some search tools that we utilize quite a bit in our office and what we promote. It is certainly not all inclusive, and if you go to our website, you go to our job search links, you will find many, many more. These are ones that I use quite often, actually almost every day. And I know Carolyn and Amy have used some of these as well.
I just want to note one thing. It's not PIJD, it's psjd.org.
Oh.
So yeah, so don't try I don't know what you're going to get if you try PIJD.org. It might be something really exciting, but it won't be public interest jobs.
I might
So
have
it's
it.
PSJD.
And so for those of you who are not familiar, it's Public Service Job Directory. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, this used to be PS LawNet. So any of you that have utilized pslawnet.org in the past, it is now this Public Service Jobs Directory. And we can even bring that up at the end if you have any confusion regarding that and regarding my typo. So that's what that is. And it's basically a house for any public interest and public sector information, jobs. They also have internships, which people don't know about. And they also have an extensive PDF of public interest law firms. And maybe, Carolyn, you can talk a little bit more about how to utilize that, because talk about an amazing resource that's entirely underutilized. If you're looking to do public interest work, but you want to work in a private setting, you can go and focus on public interest law firms. And Carolyn, you want to talk more about how you can use PSJD, or what used to be PS LawNet, to utilize that?
In terms of so what a private public interest firm is that they do public interest work, but they are not a nonprofit. So they generally, and it's different about how those firms are organized, but basically they generate their own profit, and they do different models. Some organizations, some firms just build off on the money that the attorney's fees that they gain from cases, so they're really selective of which cases they take. Others have different models, so it just depends. Did you want me to talk about PSJD and what else PSJD has to offer?
Absolutely.
What PSJD really does a great job about doing too is fellowships. So if you guys are interested in post-grad fellowships, they're really prestigious things that make your resume look amazing if you get one. But as prestigious as it is, it's prestigious because it's also competitive. So the fellowship process actually starts the beginning of your 3L year, so the fall of your 3L year. But that's not the only time that it happens. You can apply to fellowships. There's all sorts of different types of fellowships that you can apply to even after you graduate. But PSJD has a very good collection of information about what fellowships are, the different types of fellowships that are out there, and also just a general overview of all the fellowships that exist and the deadlines and things like that. So PSJD is like a mix. Like, it has all the information about public interest law, and it also has a bunch of job postings, and it's also a great resource to look up different types of employers utilizing their search functions. So if you guys are familiar with PS LawNet, PSJD is like 10 times more user-friendly. So you just gotta go in there and just mess around with the site. And if you have any questions about it, you can always ask, email PILCS, which is your Public Interest Law Career Services coordinators, and they can respond back to you.
And Amy, of these sites that are out there, and again, this is not all inclusive, what does LinkedIn utilize?
Like I mentioned before, I really like using Martindale and CalBar, and as Carolyn suggested, Google to really jumpstart my search depending on where I am when I begin. But one of the other things I also like to do, other than that using LinkedIn, is sometimes if you know who you're looking for, it's useful to even log on just to the law school's website and type their name into the search. Because oftentimes they will have, their name will pop up, maybe from something from when they were a student, depending on how long ago it was, and it's a really great way to find more information about them that way.
Okay. So in addition to the sites that we get,
I was just wondering if, because I've noticed that offices and firms and organizations with SCU grads are more SCU grad friendly. I was wondering, is there an efficient way to see a directory of what kind of grads are out there in the areas that we're looking into?
so there are a couple of things you can use. And again, this is where your cross-searching is going to come into play. So say you know the firm, but it's not necessarily a large firm. If you go to a large firm site, a lot of times you can do a filtered search and find out the SCU grads that are there. But the two sites that I use a lot are both CalBar, which Amy mentioned before, and also Martindale. So in that way, you can do search-specific filters for SCU law grads. For CalBar, what I like about it, so say you are interested in a corporation, an agency, or a firm, but you don't necessarily know that any attorneys that are represented. You can then go to, if you go to CalBar and you click on the search button, it will take you to an advanced search area. And when you click on that advanced search, all you have to do is type in the firm, the corporation, or the agency into that field, and it will bring up the entire roster of attorneys that are represented. Then you can do a filtered search for Santa Clara. I have found that the filtered search in CalBar isn't as user-friendly as I would like, so I usually limit it. If there are about 20 or less attorneys, I might go through them one by one, but if there are more than 20, then I'll utilize the filtered search. You can also do that in Martindale, so martindale.com, which is, you were asking about Martindale before, it's martindale.com. You can go in and you can do searches by practice area, by location. You can do searches by law school attended. So that will also bring up a roster of attorneys. So say you're interested in family law and you want to know what firms may be represented in San Jose. Martindale is not all-inclusive. It's subscription-based, so not all family law attorneys are going to pop up when you do the search criteria. But you will get a sampling of some of the firms, including more small solo practitioners and small firms in the area. You can then do a cross-search either in Martindale itself to find of those firms and attorneys which are Santa Clara alums, and then you can also use CalBar to get more specific information. So that's an example of how you would utilize sites and how you would cross-search. Vicki?
Another idea, if you just want to be where you know that everyone's a Santa Clara Law alum, is to use LinkedIn and use the Santa Clara Law Alumni group that's on LinkedIn, which you can join as a student. And then you can do all sorts of keyword and advanced searching in LinkedIn to, search the membership.
So we talked about LinkedIn earlier, and we talked about some of the groups represented. I recommend, and this is what I recommend to every student that comes and sees me, is that you become a member of the Law Career Services LinkedIn group. And then within that group, you become a member of the subgroup, the Mentor Directory. It is not all-inclusive. It's a fairly new group, so the number is a little bit smaller, but it is growing every day. And you do need to be careful, and you do need to weed out the students from the professionals, because there are many students that are a part of that group. But as Vicki said, you can do filtered searches, and it's a great way to start that research process. I would recommend taking that a step further and utilizing the information that you get in that LinkedIn search with something like CalBar, where you're getting a little bit more in the way of specifics, and then also really take a good look at their LinkedIn page and their LinkedIn profile to make sure it's matching your interests. Some other LinkedIn groups that you could join, and I recommend that you do so, is the Law Alumni LinkedIn group. As students, you are able to become a member of that, and that has a significant amount of members. I think it's well over 2,000 now at this point. So it's a great way to access people in the legal community. Practice area specific, you can also become a member of something like the High Tech LinkedIn group, which is an excellent resource, and I actually use that quite a bit to find people in the IP and high tech communities. In addition to that, there are some other groups that are part of a broader career network, such as the Law and Government group, the Public Interest group, there's an Arts and Entertainment LinkedIn group that are part of the university, Maine University Career Center LinkedIn group or page. So I highly recommend that you explore those as well, and I can help you and direct you there if you need assistance with that. So very quickly, just a couple of other sites that are really helpful to utilize. If you're interested in any type of corporate work, Glassdoor is phenomenal. I love it. I use it almost every day. It's sort of the kayak of job searching and employer searching, if you will. You can do legal searches. You can do corporate searches. You can do agency searches. And what it will do is it will bring up current internships or programs or jobs that are available, but it will either route you to another job feeder, so then you're becoming familiar with another research tool, or it will route you to the employer's page in and of itself. So it's a really phenomenal resource. And I'm going to talk more about some corporate in a second, but I want to sort of get through some of this other stuff. Another area which is absolutely fantastic to do research is through the Academic and Professional Development website. And in particular, they have what's called an externship search strategies guidebook. And I actually had some printed out, but they didn't make it here, and I apologize in advance, but you can go onto the APD website, and you can go under their externships link, and there are several links within that page, and one of those is the Externship Search Strategy Guidebook. And what I love about this book is it has literally about 100 different, or maybe even more, different links you can utilize for many areas of the legal community and beyond. So whether it's civil and high tech that you're interested in, judicial externships, government, crim, the externship guide breaks down, similar to the career pathway wikis, a general explanation of what these groups mean, what these practice areas mean, where you might work or find these areas represented, and then some links to support your research, both from an externship perspective, and you can also utilize that from a jobs perspective. Do either Carolyn or Amy have comments about that, or used that at all? It's relatively new. It came out last year, the end of last year. So it's sort of a one-stop shop, if you will, to find some of these links. And I included some there. So I get a lot of questions about judicial externships. I want to extern for a judge. Where do I begin that research? How do I even go about that process? And we can talk about some general information. I can direct you to some sites that will help support that. I can direct you to even some print directories that will help support that, our Clarinet resources. But if you utilize the information in the Externship Search Strategy Guide, there are about 20 different links that will help you identify judicial externship search strategies, including different courts. So it's actually quite phenomenal. And again, that's through the APD website. And if you have any problems finding that, let me know and I'll help you. Okay, so very briefly, I also want to talk about, because we haven't talked too much about large firm or corporate, these are some of the sites that you can utilize if you're interested. And I want to talk about a couple more in depth in a moment, but NALPdirectory.com is fantastic. We, as an office, as a university, are a member of NALP, the National Association for Legal Professionals. Within the NALP directory, you can find out information about firms, you can find out demographics, employer stats, how many summers they take, how many laterals they take, different practice areas represented at different offices. It's a phenomenal tool. ChambersAssociates.com and Chambers Associates Guide is another great tool. It's not all-inclusive, but it is large firm exclusive. But if you're interested in large firm, or if you're just interested in learning about different practice areas that would be represented in large firms, this is a fantastic resource. It also includes things like salary guides. So I highly recommend it, even if you're interested in small to mid-sized firms, just to find out more about practice areas and general salary guides. And then we talked about Glassdoor a little bit. GoInHouse.com and VentureLoop I like quite a bit because it gives you a snapshot of what to look forward to. So sort of that research strategy that we talked about. So as a first year, GoInHouse and VentureLoop might not be that helpful because they primarily post permanent jobs. But as a first year, if I were a first year, I would want to know what it is that it's going to take for me to look marketable to these corporations and these firms, and what I need to have in my resume and in my background, both academic and practical, to support that. So I'm going to go to these sites like GoInHouse and VentureLoop to find out what it is that I need to do in order to accomplish that goal. It's that preliminary research that we're talking about. VentureLoop is really neat because it shows you the job, it shows you the capital behind it, and it gives you descriptions of both the corporation that's housing the job and a description of the capital or the investors behind it. It's really interesting. I highly recommend that you check it out. And Patent Buddy is an example of a practice area specific in high tech where you can go and find out information from inventors, from attorneys, from people within the high tech and patent community. So it's an interesting site as well. And very quickly, and I want to throw it back to Carolyn and Amy here to talk a little bit about the value of networking and utilizing that in your research process. So, in my opinion, talking to people is the best form of research you can do. So you can get all this print information, you can go online for hours, and you can get an overview of things. You can even get some specific information. You can get a general guide of where to go. But in order to find out what it's really all about, you need to go to the source. You need to talk to somebody that's been in that role. So, let's use the example of family law again. So you did your research on Martindale and CalBar and LinkedIn and all of these sites to find out a little, career pathway wikis, to find out a little bit more about what family law is and what it incorporates. But now you want to find out the day in the life. You want to find out what it really means to be a family law attorney and what that incorporates. Well, in order to find that out, you need to actually talk to somebody who's lived it, breathed it, for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, 15 years. You're going to get different viewpoints, you're going to get different perspectives depending on how long they've been in the industry or that particular practice group. If you're interested in transactional work, you're going to want to talk to a transactional attorney. If you're interested in litigation, you want to talk to a litigator. So utilizing your network is probably the most important research tool you can use and do. Amy and Carolyn, can you sort of just wrap this up and talk about why it's important to utilize your network and how you both do that? Amy.
Okay. Well, I know that this has been stressed a lot since we've all first started coming here, but as repetitive as it really is really important to utilize your network. Those spreadsheets that you make when you compile all your research can be really great help to you. You'd be really surprised at actually how willing these employers and SU graduates are to talk to you. If you just shoot them an email or you pick up the phone and give them a call, they're really eager and willing to help. So, and you might even pick up a mentor. So you should definitely utilize the SU Law Mentorship Directory that we've started to build and form friendships that way. You all know that nowadays it's pretty difficult to get a job through traditional avenues. So you really want to make sure that you do make these kinds of efforts to reach out to our graduates, and they will put your name in the stream, and hopefully eventually from there.
So from the public interest side, the public interest community is so small and so tight-knit that a lot of the jobs don't even really come up onto the actual job postings, and you find them through different employers, different attorneys who know you. And so I always make it a point to go out there and let everyone know what I'm interested in. And so I've been receiving a whole bunch of job information from my past employers, from past law clerks that I've worked with, and it's really about building that network that you can really just plug yourself in to be able to be on the get all the news, whether it be a job posting that's posted nationally or something more discreet that they're looking for quickly. And so I really do emphasize going out there, getting to know people, not only the attorneys but your classmates now, And all the law clerks that you work with from different schools and your different positions, these are also really crucial people that you should stay in touch with, because you just never know where that job opportunity is going to come from. And the more you talk to people, the more you connect with people, and the more that you make yourself memorable to these people, the more you're going to get out of everything.
And I want to bring up the importance of what we're trying to demonstrate this week, the whole purpose of Gateway to Success Week, which leads to that ultimate end goal of networking. So Monday, you were taught the specifics and the fundamentals of resumes. Yesterday, you were taught the fundamentals and the specifics of cover letters. What does that mean? That's your research for developing those marketing materials, right? To getting yourself polished, to getting to the point where an employer may even consider you. Today, you're learning about how to research effectively and efficiently in everything from practice area information to jobs, externships, and how to network and how to utilize all of that information to get to your next step, which will be to have that conversation with an employer. So, taking all the information that we have today and utilizing that to have that informational interview, to have that job interview, to network at an event is incredibly important. Tomorrow you'll learn how to effectively edit and select a writing sample to complement your application package. So again, utilizing both the print materials and your interpersonal skills and your interpersonal characteristics to develop the holistic candidate that we're trying to instill in you, that we're trying to teach you that is important for your overall success as an attorney or another member of the legal community or beyond. So take each of these programs and understand their connectivity to one another. Friday, we're going to talk about networking. So you have all this information leading up to sort of the mothership of, or the primary purpose, if you will, to have or engage in a conversation with a member of the legal community, with an employer, with, it could even be a professor. But what we're trying to do is show you and prepare you and get you ready for that conversation. How do you effectively communicate? The art of the conversation. How do you effectively engage in a session where you're going to get the information you need in order to make a clear and efficient and effective decision? And how are you going to get your information across to an employer or whoever it may be in a way that's going to be successful for you and market you for your ultimate success? And then we're complementing that by having the registration for the Student Alumni Dinner Friday after the networking program, where you're going to actually put everything that you've learned into action and use. And you're going to have that one-on-one conversation with an employer in a setting that incorporates your social skills as well. So these are all really important steps leading up to that whole package, if you will, the whole candidate, the well-rounded person that we're trying to develop within you. If you have any questions about this program, about any other program, or for Carolyn or Amy?
I just have to plug real quick because I promised Professor Kreitzberg that I would. If you're in her class, please let her know that Carolyn did this. Professor Kreitzberg highly stresses that you come and talk to them. Talk to your professors about what you're interested in, about finding a job. They are also one of those highly underutilized resources. They're really there to help you learn about the practice fields, learn about who to talk to, and they can connect you to the field. So visit professors like Professor Kreitzberg.
Absolutely. Completely underutilized resource and not only amazing but highly effective and very well networked in the legal community and beyond.
One question, can we get the slides today?
Yes, I am going to correct my typo and then I will submit it to our communications manager who will upload it onto our website along with the other PowerPoints that have been available for the week.
Through APD? Or?
It will be through the Law Career Services.
Okay.
Actually, it'll be through, we can see about putting it on the LCS website, but it will also be available through our YouTube, our video series.
Okay.
And you should be able to access it there as well.
Can you give us an email notice? Of course, we all sign in. And
When the PowerPoints are up?
yes.
Absolutely. So what we can do is, we'll probably do it at the end of this week, and we'll list when the
Sure.
PowerPoints have been up and where you can access them. Sort of a recap, if you will.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.
Our Facebook, if you like us on Facebook or follow us on our Twitter